Recording in progress. Okay, I'm going to introduce you now to Louise. Louise has kindly given up her time this evening to talk us through safeguarding. I'm going to let Louise introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her background and I guess and where she works, and who she works for. So over to you, Louise, if that's okay.
Yeah, cheers. I feel like I've hijacked your meeting, and I really hope it's not boring and that you get something out of it tonight. Thanks very much, Steve, for inviting me along. I just a little bit about who I am. So I'm Louise White, and I'm the service manager for the Adult Safeguarding Service at Somerset County Council, working within adult social care. So my job is to manage all the safeguarding adult referrals that we get into Somerset County Council and work out what on earth we're going to do with them and how we're going to work with people. So tonight is a little bit about me sharing what I know with you. What would be really helpful is there's not very many of us on the call, so I don't think this will take very long, is if we can just do a whip round of who's in the room, and if it would be really interesting to know if you've got any prior knowledge of adult safeguarding, just so that I know where I'm pitching this. And then what we'll do is I'll work out how to get up the slides and we'll do a bit of death by PowerPoint. So let's start with who's in the room. Steve, everybody knows Steve, don't they? Yeah, excellent. Next on the list then is Hazel. Hazel, do you want to introduce yourself and just tell me who you are, what's your name, where you come from?
Yeah, I'm Hazel Martin. I am a nurse. I'm a mental health nurse, and I have worked as a link nurse for safeguarding. I work with safeguarding now because I work with continuing healthcare.
Brilliant, lovely. Yeah. Welcome, Hazel. Very glad to have you in the room.
Thank you.
Thank you. Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie from Western Cricket Club. I am a deputy safeguarding officer in a primary school, so no experience of adult mental health, but of adult safeguarding, but yeah, deputy at primary.
Excellent. We're going to cover a little bit about the difference between adults and children, the obvious difference. Thank you very much. Now you've all flipping jumped about. Hang on a minute. Now, Donna. Where's Donna?
Hiya, yeah, if you can hear me.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh brilliant. Yeah, I'm Donna Kelly with Clavering Cricket Club. I'm also work for Western College as a first response safeguarding officer, and do some adult safeguarding as well with some of the 19+ learners that I work with.
Excellent, welcome. Thank you. Who have we not had? John?
Hi, I'm John Watson, also at Clavering Cricket Club. I'm sat next to Donna, so if there's any noise in the background, it's because we're sat next to each other.
Still Donna.
Yeah. No, I don't have any experience in adult safeguarding, so yeah.
Okay.
Got to start with the basics.
That's fine. I'm hopeful you'll get it.
No worries. Cheers.
Thank you. Who haven't I done? Laura?
Hello. I'm Laura. I'm from Bridgewater Cricket Club. I'm a primary teacher. But I also have child safeguarding experience, but no adult safeguarding experience.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Leighton? I can't hear you, Leighton. You be on mute.
Oh, sorry. I'm Leighton. I'm from Wendon Cricket Club. I do have experience of safeguarding in like primary schools as being a sports coach, but no adult safeguarding.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Andrew?
Hello, you're right.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello. So my experience is only in children, so I haven't got anything adult wise, but I'm from Bridgewater Cricket Club.
Great, thank you. Wayne? I'm hoping Wayne's looking for his mute button.
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute it for some reason.
There you are.
Sorry about that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm at Street Cricket Club. I also work at a school where I coach football and cricket and head of ground, but no experience in adult safeguarding.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And Katie? Katie, we're just introducing ourselves. I don't know if you can hear us. Possibly not. I'll move on while we work that one out. Tom?
Hi, it's not Tom, it's Jenny. I just can't bother to change the details. I work with, I'm a deputy manager in a private day nursery, so quite a lot of experience with the small people, not so much with the big people.
Okay. Okay. Is that everybody apart from Katie?
Gemma.
Gemma. Gemma, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, hello, I'm Gemma. I work with Jenny at Mr. Norton Cricket Club. I don't really have any experience with safeguarding adults, and the only very limited experience I have is running All Stars with Jenny in terms of the children at the cricket club.
Okay, great, thank you. And Katie, I can see you.
Hi, sorry, yeah,
That's all
I
right.
was let in and then I cut out. Are we introducing ourselves and what?
Yeah, that's what we're
experience we have with
doing. Yeah,
safeguarding?
yeah.
I'm a nursery practitioner, so I've also have a lot of experience working with safeguarding and children. I've have safeguarding in young adults as well through working at a school and through disabilities, dyslexia services when I was at uni. I used to be a lifeguard. We've done that. I literally, yeah, on it with safeguarding. Sounds really awful, but yeah.
Great. All right, thank you. Welcome. Now, it's entirely up to you what you do in terms of cameras on, cameras off. I don't tend to pay much attention to you as I'm talking. So, you know, I'm not offended if you want to turn them off. The other thing is, once I've found the slides and we start them, if you've got a question or I'm talking a load of rubbish and you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, then just stop me, just speak, stop me, and we'll revisit it. We'll go as fast or as slow as we need to tonight. Okay, so I'm going to have an attempt to try and share my screen, which should then bring up the delightful PowerPoint. Somebody might need to just tell me if you can see it. Can you see? What can you see?
Yeah, so I can see it. You might just need to put it in slide mode, and then it should be good.
Let's have a look, see if we can get that going.
Or start slideshow.
And what can you see now? My first or my second screen?
I can see your second screen. I think I can see your notes.
All right, hang on a minute then. No, I'm not going to pull it out. I'm going to take it out of that because I've got two screens and I don't know how to unplug the second screen. That hasn't got a camera on it. So what I'm going to do is just make it as big as I can so that you can see it. What I will do is share the slides with Steve so that he can circulate them to you at some point, because there are a lot of slides. I'm going to whiz through a lot of those slides. I was saying there are only key slides in all of this, and I know it says 56 at the bottom, but that's because I've added some additional resources to it so that you can dip into it if you come across something and you want to just refresh your memory on it. And I've put some hyperlinks on stuff in case people are interested. So you'll be pleased to know we've done slide 1. We're very quickly just going to run into slide 2. I just make a point really of saying, so you guys needed some adult safeguarding training, which is brilliant, because the point of view I come with this at is most of you, not all of you, but most of you said that you had no adult experience. But as far as I can gauge, most of you are adults. So there will be things that you will know that will surprise you that you know, I'm hoping, and that this will kind of validate it for you as well. So the point that I'm coming across at this with is, if I can share this with you and it touches a chord or it means something to you, or it just makes you think a little bit more, then I've kind of done my job, because the more people that know about this, then the better, really, because you can now spread the word of what you know. So I thank you for being part of it. And it's very relaxed, very informal. Please ask the questions. There is no stupid question. I love a stupid question. The stupider, the better, really. There are no experts in the room. I think it's fair to say that as adults, we know a little bit about stuff, but we don't know everything. I wouldn't profess to know everything. There's always something new I learn. Just take part, take away some of the learning. And if anything, if nothing else, just do something different the next time you're faced with a situation that might be about abuse or might be about adults at risk. That's all that's asked. I've got some objectives because it's got to be worth my while coming. So my objectives are to try and increase your confidence and to try and let you leave tonight having learned something new that perhaps you didn't know before. And just so that nobody nods off halfway through the presentation, I'm going to set you with a task that we're going to finish on. And the task that we're going to finish on is I want you to tell me at the end when we do a little round robin, what one thing are you going to take away from tonight's learning? And the tricky bit with this is those that go first are going to be fine, but those that go after, you can't repeat what somebody else has already said. Okay, so you do have to pay attention. There is no test. If we were in a classroom, because this is like a half day or a whole day session, we're cramming into the next, I don't know, half an hour or so. If we were in a classroom, we would have done a test, we would have done a quiz, we would have done all lots of interactive stuff, and we're not going to do that tonight because we just haven't got the time. Really important messages today. Recognise abuse, know how to respond to it, know how to report it, and let's see if we can go some way to preventing it from happening, because if we prevent it from happening, I won't need a job. Okay. So most of this we've discussed. One of the things I would say, though, this is where my little bit of a government health warning comes in. If anybody gets distressed or upset or needs to just mute themselves or take off their camera or dial out and then dial back in, please do. I mean, I talk very candidly about adult abuse because I'm used to it and it's kind of what I do. But it is really quite different for people, and some people have never experienced it and some people deal with it very matter-of-factly. So please do whatever you need to do to just keep yourself safe, because I've not got any gruesome pictures. I could have done, but I'm not. And I've got a few situations that I can talk to you about in terms of casework that we do just to bring it alive a little bit more. But I don't intend to share with you details about people really. This slide is about some commonly used words and phrases that come with being in an adult safeguarding world, really. So you will hear these words interspread between the presentation today, but also when people start talking about adult safeguarding. So they talk about vulnerable adults, they talk about adults at risk, they talk about risk in itself, keeping safe, about what mental health and physical health might be, and the welfare of people. And I've just kind of put it out there that they kind of all interchange and interlink. I personally don't like the word or the title vulnerable adult, because in a room with a lion, we're all a vulnerable adult. So it's about the describing what makes me vulnerable. That I'm more interested in, the description of why somebody might be more vulnerable than the next person. Often there is some dispute, I suppose, about what safeguarding means with regard to mental health and physical health. And what I mean by that is somebody mentally unwell, or does somebody have physical health needs? And often what we find is we get physical health presentation, whereas mental health presentation probably goes to a mental health specialist team. But that might also mean risk, and it might also mean that people need safeguarding. So it's just being aware of these things. Okay. So I thought it would be helpful for you to have just a little bit of information about what is social care and why is it important, because my service is only part of a bigger network of adult social care. So I thought I'd do this in a little bit of myth busting. People tend to think of, so when we talk about adult social care, I'm talking about what people would have called the welfare state, or social services is another one. It's rebranded so many times, but it's Adult Social Care at the moment. The focus for us is to keep people as independent as possible. So the majority of the people that come into contact with our services are older people, or people with, not necessarily always older people, but definitely people with additional disabilities or lifelong conditions or health conditions. A lot of our work is about early intervention to prevent things from tipping into a bigger problem. And a lot of the work that we do early on with people is to find them a resolution and signpost them to other services. So Somerset County Council Adult Social Care, we do assessments of people's needs, but we very rarely provide an additional service. The assessment is the service. We usually signpost people or get people to self-direct their care and support by other means. So there's a bit of a myth that people get social workers for life. They might in children's, but they don't in adults. We're very task-centered and orientated on dealing with that issue and then moving on. So we don't form a dependency. We do support those with the highest need, and we do have eligibility criteria. And one of the biggest learning for us really, and for me, for you to take away, is that just calling somebody a vulnerable adult doesn't mean that it's going to give them an automatic entry into our service. The other thing that's really important is so in the local authority, we don't need to know about everybody. So there'll be loads of people that you come into contact with that will never come into contact with the local authority and never should. They will be people that don't have care and support needs. They will be people that live quite independent, normal, everyday sort of lives. So they're the type of people that you will come into contact with. So it should be really, 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 really rare for you guys to ever have an adult safeguarding need. However, the whole point of tonight is you might have that need, so you need to know what to do about it. So just a very basic list there of things that the local authority now do. We no longer put people in care homes, whip them into different places and institutions. We don't do that unless we absolutely have to, and then we do it with their consent and their permissions. The whole point of what we're doing is to try and keep people in communities. So some of what you hear today might be useful for you in your adult life, in your everyday communities with your neighbours and your friends in the community. Okay. The legislation is really important in social care, and it's really important because it gives us the guide of what we should do when. So the legislation we use in adult safeguarding is called the Care Act, funny enough, and throughout the Care Act there is this notion of well-being, and the idea is that if every human being living on the planet had a good and healthy well-being, then they would live very autonomous lives and be happy and fulfilled. So the whole point of social care is a bit fluffy and pink in that we try to encourage people to keep well, keep healthy, and to lead their best lives, really. When social care do an assessment, these are the 9 domains that they use to mark somebody's abilities. So for instance, they will be asking somebody what it is they need help in, whether it's managing money, accessing, going in and out of their home. Is it getting their shopping? Is it to keep safe? Is it, I don't know, to wash and dress, take medication? What is it they need help with? And that's what we're looking at with wellbeing. Is we're just trying to keep an eye on people to make sure that they're well, and when they're not, providing them with a service or that might support them. In Somerset, we have a front door. Now, I think some people might be North Somerset, so it might be slightly different in North Somerset, but I'll talk about the differences as we go through. In Somerset, we have a call centre called Somerset Direct. They are a call centre. They answer phones, I don't know, 8 till 6 every Monday to Friday. They will be the first point of call that you speak to. They are trained within an inch of their lives to try and seek and resolve the problem at point of contact. What we encourage is for the person to ring themselves if they feel able to. So one of the biggest things that you might want to take away from today is you can listen to somebody as long as you like, but actually what they might need is somebody to sit next to them when they make the call, or to just be around, or to talk them through it. But it's really best if they make the call themselves. If they're not able to do that, you're obviously able to do that. You will need to ensure that you've got their consent to do that, because it gets a little bit awkward when you don't get their consent and we then ring them and talk to them about things. At Somerset Direct, they check what we know about this person already. So they check our database, and they will then be able to signpost and offer some suggestions of things that might help, and things that somebody might want to try, or just gathering a bit more information. So safeguarding is one option of where things can go, but there are other options. This is a slide I've just popped in there because there's some hyperlinks on here that might help you with what some of the other options might be. So Community Connect is like a directory of services in Somerset. So if somebody's interested in doing something locally and they've got a need, then they could go there. The other one that I'll just draw your attention to is that the SSAB, which is Somerset Safeguarding Adults Board website. If you need more information after today, there's a great hyperlink there with lots of information on, if you need it. So these aren't simple reasons, but there are 5 reasons why we think about safeguarding adults differently to children's. So the abuse that adults can experience is different to children's, although there are some similarities. And I would say that it's slightly different, but also the impact is different as well. There are separate procedures and separate policies, so it's not common for people to know nothing about adult safeguarding. And my service, we prefer it to be called adult protection because it makes a lot more sense than safeguarding. The way it's reported, the legislation, how organisations use that information and what steps they take is very different. So in children's, it's very strict in what they will do in terms of instigating safe child protection measures, whereas in adults, it's slightly different because adults have a right, believe it or not, to make unwise decisions. And sometimes those unwise decisions might be things that we might think are crazy, but as an adult with capacity, they would be allowed to make those decisions, can you believe? And the other thing is that we do need to take into account the adult's needs in each situation. And what that means is that there may be factors that are influencing that adult's ability to make decisions, such as coercive control or being completely brainwashed by somebody else. And they are living in fear because if they decide to do something and the other person doesn't agree with it, then they might be at risk. So there are things that may skew people's decision making that we need to be aware of and know the impact of that. Okay. So recognizing adult abuse. This is, I say it sounds quite simple. It is very basic. So every human being has human rights. So abuse is usually a violation of somebody's rights by a person or people, and it can be a single act or repeated act. So it can be a one-off major event, or it could be a number of small things that accumulate into a bigger problem, or it might be a number of small things that when you add them up, actually you start to realize the impact of that person. And believe it or not, it can happen anywhere by anyone, which is quite shocking, really. So any adult over 18 may experience harm or abuse. And there are a certain group of people who legislation protects because of a set of criteria. So this is the criteria slide for referrals into adult safeguarding. So if the person that you're talking to has needs for care and support, and because of their needs, they're not able to protect themselves from whatever type of abuse they're experiencing, then they might well be eligible for a safeguarding response from us. Now, if they don't have care and support needs, but the level of risk, like to life and limb, might be so great that actually everybody is so worried about them, then we might do what we would call a non-statutory inquiry, which would just mean that we would do more of a risk management approach than an adult safeguarding approach. Okay. So what we also need to take into account is that actually adults over 18 who have care and support needs experiencing abuse and neglect may also have additional factors that we need to take into account and be aware of. Some of them might have a learning disability, some of them might have some addiction needs, or be frail, or be suffering with a mental illness. So we just need to understand really what it is about that person. So as much information as we can get from whoever's making the referral is helpful, because it then helps us understand how to respond. So adult safeguarding is everybody's business. I'm not precious about who tells us about an adult situation. Anybody can tell us, anybody can pick up the phone and ring Somerset Direct and tell us about it. The more people like yourselves that we talk to, then the more likelihood we're going to get out there to people that really need our help and support. Protecting people's right to live safe. People do have a right to live, safe, free from abuse. It's one of their human rights. It's one of our human rights. And within Somerset, we are really, really lucky that we have a great network of social care professionals, but also other agencies. So we've got great links with the police, the fire service, trading standards, our health colleagues. So there is a huge network of partners out there that will work with us when we're concerned about a person. So this is where some of you might want to take off your mic, and this is what I would have done this as part of a quiz had we been in the room together. It's just about, in the Care Act, there are 10 different categories of abuse. Can anyone, thankfully I've still got 10 fingers so I can count it on my fingers. Can anybody name any of the categories of abuse? Does anybody know?
Would that be things like physical?
Yes.
Yeah. Mental?
They call it emotional, psychological,
Emotional.
but I'll give you that. Yeah.
Financial?
Yes. And material, same one. Yeah.
Sexual?
Yes. Is everybody frantically Googling stuff for this working remotely business? Everybody.
Neglect?
Neglect, yeah. So there's two neglects. There's self-neglect, which is obviously me neglecting myself and my personal hygiene or environment or hoarding or something like that. And then the other one is neglect and acts of admission, which is usually done to you by another person or organisation. And we got bored with that game. Shall I move on? Because the next slide tells you.
Oh.
They are. So some really interesting ones have come up on this that I'd like to just talk about. We'll cover modern slavery a little bit later on, but it's really interesting that modern slavery is on here. My team get very excited about anything modern slavery-ish because it's just so unique to us, but becoming more and more prevalent in our community, believe it or not. Domestic abuse has got its own category, and of note, domestic abuse is separated from psychological and emotional. So you could be having, you could experience domestic abuse as well as psychological and emotional abuse, as well as sexual abuse. What are the ones really interesting on here? Self-neglect, I'll cover that a little bit. We're seeing more self-neglect with COVID, interestingly, and we've done some research on that. We think it's because of the community response when COVID first hit, in that there are more people checking on their neighbours now, and there are more people knocking on doors and asking people if they're okay. And there have been people who are shielding, who've needed their medications. So pharmacists have rung us and said, look, that person's not been in for their medication, which has triggered us to go out and find them and see them. So there's a lot more self-neglect now than there was being brought to our attention.
Can I ask what organisational is?
Yeah, so organisational abuse is an organisation that may well be abusing you, i.e. they're not following their procedures, or it might, so it's mainly thinking about like a care home or a hospital. And it might be that their regimes and their practices might be causing you abuse. So it might be, I don't know, we've had lots of hoo-ha in the press about the COVID restrictions within care homes. So that may well have been that they've imposed sanctions on visiting times, which may well then have impacted on somebody's well-being.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That's okay. These are the ones, so out of that 10, there are 4 that I think in a cricket domain, I know nothing about cricket, that you may come across, okay? And when I say come across, I think these might be the ones where your spidery senses might pick up things. So I don't think anybody's ever going to walk up to you and say, I'm struggling financially, I'm really in a real dire straits, and actually they need a safeguarding response. But actually you might pick up some subtle signs. So these are the things I think you probably need to be more attuned to. So what I've done on the next slide is just explain some other things to be alerted to. And then we're going to just explore some of those categories of abuse a little bit more, so that you get some sort of visual about what you might be looking for. So this slide here is more about just some things to, it's not a definitive list, there will be others, and I've just popped on some because you might see some of this. So, you know, cricket field, I don't know, short sleeves, short trousers, you may see burns. You might not know they're burns, but you may see something on somebody's skin, bruising, burns, scald marks, tie marks, just unusual markings on their skin that you might just want to make some very gentle, oh, that looks sore, everything all right, kind of comments. You might not. You might start to think that somebody looks very thin, very disheveled. They might turn up late. They might have more of an odour than just playing cricket for the afternoon. They might be withdrawn and not wishing to be part of the group. All sorts of things can indicate that something might be wrong, and just be inquisitive and ask gentle, probing questions. So physical abuse includes all of these things. Physical abuse also includes things like medication, people over medicating or being sedated without them knowing it, or sometimes with them knowing it, being restrained, not being kicked or pushed, and people might display things like not wanting to change in front of everybody or in the changing rooms, they might wear really long sleeves or up to their neck sort of collar thing, just to cover their skin. And people might flinch or have broken areas on their skin. So it's just being aware of people's physical appearance is all that means. And then just finding out sensitively whether they're okay, whether there's something else going on. Domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is everywhere. It is a massive problem for the people that are experiencing it, but also local agencies in terms of how to respond. So for a lot of people, lockdown was harder than most. And what has been really great in Somerset is that there are some safe places for people to go. So a pharmacy is a really great place for people to go to be safe. They just need to let the pharmacist know that they need to be there safely. They will need to let somebody know. Banks. So I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but over COVID, some of the banks closed or some of them worked reduced hours. But any bank will offer somebody a safe place. And we know in Somerset that Boots and Tesco's were also offering people safe places, if that's just to sit and be there alone, or a safe place for them to ring and call for help and get some help actioned to them. Domestic abuse includes abuse within a familial relationship. So it doesn't need to be a partner's. You don't need to be married. It can be between, I don't know, a mother and her son, but they need to be living in the same household and have that dependency. And it does include things like honour killings and things like that. So it can be quite extreme. There is a great network of people out there to support. It's just sometimes the confidence of people taking that step to ask for support. Unfortunately, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will experience domestic abuse. And what we're learning more over COVID is that we are having more men come forward to say that they are experiencing quite extreme domestic abuse, which is an incredible worry. But what we're trying to do is make sure that people are getting signposted and directed to the right support that they can. There is also quite an increase of risk when domestic abuse is apparent. And we have experienced in Somerset an increase in people being killed through domestic abusive relationships. So it's incredibly serious. We've talked about this a little bit, but it will also include things like coercive control, gaslighting. Gaslighting is about somebody trying to convince another person that they've not heard the information right, or that they have got something wrong. And it's about a play on words and sentences to make somebody feel like they've always got it wrong. And it can be low level, subtle behaviours, or it can be full on extreme strangulations, throwing of objects, sexual assault. It can vary. It doesn't matter what it is they're experiencing. Everybody should have the same support available to them. And interestingly, forced marriage comes in this as well. And it's very interesting how forced marriage is portrayed. And we do have forced marriage situations in Somerset. We've very recently supported a lady who presented at the Marks and Spencer's cafe in Musgrove and asked staff for help. And when we arrived to help her along with the police to take her to a place of safety, she had been subject to a forced marriage. She was being continued raped. She was being made to hold down 3 jobs to have the income. So it's very real and it's very prevalent out there. There are specialist organisations, and I've popped on there the number for them. Thankfully, it is Avon and Somerset wide. and there is a hyperlink there to a website that people can view as well. They can view it and secure their browser history so that people can't check their browser history to see where they've been. Financial and material abuse, I mean, everybody can experience some financial woes, but this is to the extreme where it's absolutely impacting on them. And it can be lots of different things. So it can be about benefits, but it's not always. It's usually somebody they know has nicked their money, which is theft and should be reported to the police. But some indicators of it are that they never pay their subs, they've never got food available to them, they always lost their card, or they might be trying to pay for things through the post, and it's an unusual payment, unusual withdrawals. Very rarely do they have loads of money. Self-neglect. So whilst this is about, you know, people neglecting themselves and their personal hygiene, it does cover things such as hoarding. And just going to put it out there that hoarding is very different to collecting. So I am a collector. I like to collect shoes. My partner might think I'm a hoarder, but I'm not. So it's just about being clear with people about what is it that they are hoarding and why, because usually they are hoarding something absolutely precious to them, and it's just that it's a risk because it might fall on them. So we have been into some situations with people where there has been a very tiny path through a whole build up of a room, and the whole house has been like it, where you just got these little pathways through, and as you're walking, things are falling down on top of you. And when we've talked to people about this, it's memories that they can't see to part with, or it might be things that they've just collected throughout. Now, normally there's a trigger for somebody hoarding something, but it's not for us to, you know, question or define with them the whys. It's how can we make you live with this any better? So we're not ever going to put a skip on somebody's drive and completely gut their house. That's not what we do, because that would just upset them. It's about how we can help people make it less of a problem, less of a fire risk. Just talking about fire risk, self-neglect does become more important when we're talking about hoarding, because we have had some deaths in Somerset where the hoarding has not helped because it is an accelerant when there is a fire. So the fire service are really good. So believe it or not, I can say this because I am a social worker by trade, but not everybody, funny enough, wants a social worker coming up their path. But a lot of people will let a lovely fireman in uniform in their property to give them some words of advice about how to keep safe. So if we can go into somebody who's quite reluctant and with a fireman, then usually they will accept things a lot more. So think wider than just social services sometimes. I don't need to go into that, but there are some indicators there of people living in self-neglecting states. Modern slavery. I mentioned about modern slavery and how excited my team get about it. So there is modern slavery out there in Somerset, believe it or not, and we link very closely to our police colleagues when we're trying to deal with modern slavery situation. So some of the things we've come across in Somerset: car washes. We had a situation in Shepton Mallet in a car wash, and the people were actually living in the storage unit next to the car wash, and they had been they'd been paid absolutely minimum money, just food, really, enough for food, and they were living there and working there. They were forced to do that. We've had people on farm properties, fruit pickers, daffodil pickers, all sorts of situations really where modern slavery has been an issue. And it's usually where somebody is forced to work because there's some sort of control or threat over them. It's usually that they owe a drug debt. Might not always be that though. It could be linked to county lines. It may not be, But if people have got wads of money, then it's probably county lines and probably drugs related. There's some links there to modern slavery, and there's a particular link there, I'm hoping it works, to a YouTube clip. I'm pretty sure this is the YouTube clip that I showed my nieces and nephews. They're, I don't know, 10, 14 and 16. And it just explains very simply what modern slavery might look like in the community. So it's quite impactful. Sexual abuse, we've talked about this a little bit. Obviously it's about rape and sexually doing something to another that they may not want, however that might come. It's very difficult to touch on this subject with people unless they approach it with you, because it's always that awkwardness about what's happened. But if nobody ever had conversations with people that were difficult, then we wouldn't talk to anybody, would we? So we kind of have to park that and just deal with it. And the key to sexual abuse thing is the soonest we can get some support to people, the better the evidence chain, the better we can support them, the better their recovery. So what I'm saying here, I use meerkats quite a lot because meerkats are brilliant. And I suppose what I'm asking you is to be more meerkat. Meerkats, they tiddle taddle to each other and they are forever scanning the horizon. And if I think about, you know, the cricket pitch and what's going on a cricket match, you potentially would be able to be scanning that horizon and working out whether or not something's wrong. If your senses spike, so we've got lots of different sensory receptors, if something feels wrong, then it probably is. And I suppose your bit is to be just a bit more nosy, be a bit more interested in people, ask those curious questions, check out if people are all right. And I think we should do that for everyone anyway, as part of society. How to respond. So this is one of the key slides, number 36. Remember number 36, because this is about some things that you might want to think about if you were ever approached by somebody who wanted to share with you something that was going on for them. One of the most important things you can do for people is just to offer them an ear, sit and listen to them, or just offer them the opportunity to just sit and be and talk about what's important to them. Please don't think you need to know all the answers, because nobody does, and actually nobody would expect you to know all the answers. It's okay not to know, and it's okay to tell that person, well, I don't know what to do with this, but let's find out. It's important not to get people's hopes up and not to make promises that you yourself can't deliver, or thinking that somebody else, so let's report it to the police and they're going to solve it, might be helpful, but it might not be the solution. Always think about, so people tend to start difficult conversations with, I'd like to tell you something, but I don't want you to tell anyone. Or that's okay, but actually I might need to tell somebody because I might not be able to hold all of this myself. So until we've talked about what it is, I won't know whether or not I need to tell somebody. So you tell me what it is, and then we'll work out who we're going to tell and how we're going to tell. Usually the person will have been thinking about it and stewing on it for quite a while. So ask them what they think would help, because people are really quite resourceful and will often come up with really good ideas. They might just need somebody to run it past. Don't walk away, but don't overcrowd them. So don't shy away from having that difficult conversation, because usually if you've got it right, it should be them doing the talking. I usually say to people, I can see that this is uncomfortable for you. It's okay to tell people that it's uncomfortable. But likewise, once they have dropped the bombshell with you and you have had this conversation, don't overcrowd them and don't leave them to it. So just check in with them every now and again, saying, everything okay? Everything getting sorted? But equally, don't pressurize them into doing things, because they have to stay in control of what happens. Importantly, if once all of that's happened and you've had a conversation and the person's going about their day to day, if it continues to bother you, then you might need to find somebody within your network that you can talk to. So usually if something's bothering you, you need to be sharing it. These are just a helpful side of some things to talk about with people. Some curious questions. I'm going to skip through these because you can revert back to the slides when you get them. In terms of reporting it, if it's a crime, you have to ring 999, or if it's not an emergency, you can do 101. It's helpful if the person does it themselves. Sometimes they're not able to, so you can support with that. So in Somerset, it's Somerset Direct, which I've mentioned already. There's an email address, telephone number, or you can go through the website of the Safeguarding Adult Board. North Somerset, for anybody that might apply to, there's some links there as well for how to let them know. In terms of, and I'm sure you guys will know this, there are lots of links on your cricket club website about your role, welfare within the cricket club. So I've just popped those links on there, hoping that they will be some direct routes for you to take if you need them. Prevention is always better. One of the ways we can prevent abuse from happening is to be able to recognise it at an earlier stage and to take action at a earlier stage. Being able to share what you know, so hopefully you'll go away tonight with a little bit of something different that you'll be able to share with somebody else. Encourage people in the community to keep safe. So if you know somebody that's living in a hoarding situation, for instance, and it's becoming a bit of a concern because you can't actually exit, then start talking to them about what can we do about this? Is there just a little bit of a box we need to move, or do we need a fire safety check? Include partner agencies. I've already mentioned that people love a fireman, but there are other agencies like Trading Standards that will help people with scams and postal things. There are lots of other agencies that specialise in the different types of abuses. So it doesn't all have to be you, but also we can be signposting people to other services to help them. Curiosity and you being curious is one of the biggest things that's going to help somebody, because you're just going to be interested to them and you're just going to be alert of those subtle changes that might happen for people. I'm just going to pop in there about adult social care in Somerset County Council. I probably should have had this slide further up because that just outlines how you can access us. But also what I wasn't sure of is whether or not you knew that there were different departments to adult social care. So there's a hospital team called Health Interface. There's a community team that are based in each locality. There's a mental health social care team that are based in geographical patches. There's a deprivation of liberty. That's for people who might have been deprived of their freedom. So we have to do a different kind of assessment for that. And then there's my service. They all kind of dovetail and work together. Community Connect is a resource that you can use to signpost people who might be in need of adult social care support. So that's a slide that you might want to share with them or their families if needed, and it just helps you with some other options if people don't want to come to us. Not everybody likes social services. Just some other useful stuff. When we talk about adults, we talk about adults over 18 who usually have got the mental ability to make their own decisions. There are some people who may not be able to make decisions about very important things in their life, and it might be because they've got a head injury, it might be because they're under the influence of substance or misuse of alcohol, or it might be because they've got a dementia or a learning disability. So the Mental Capacity Act is another legislation we work in, and these are the principles, the 5 principles of the Act, and the idea is that you start with number 1 to assume people have capacity. If you've answered number 1 as actually, I don't think this person has got capacity because, and it's described the because, then you move to number 2 and you work through the list So it should be, again, quite rare for you to come across this, but that you may have cause to question whether or not that person's actually making decisions very wisely. And this would be the legislation you do it under. I'm going to skip through this because we've pretty much talked about a lot of this. But adult safeguarding is about making sure that people are empowered to make their own decisions. We don't do unto adults in the same way as children and child protection do. We're very much more relaxed about people taking risks. We are meant to be preventing it and taking action before harm occurs or preventing it from happening again. But we also have to do that in a way that doesn't take away everybody's rights, that is proportionate to the risk and is well balanced, and it's clear that the protection of those people with the greatest need is really important. We work with others, but we also have to be accountable to the people that do need it. Anne Craft Trust do some really good, very quick films about adult safeguarding. If you're interested and you want to have a greater look, then you can go through the Anne Craft Trust. Most of it's free. It's a good place to go. And there is a clip there, a video about adult safeguarding in sport. So this is quite a new thing that's starting to merge. Okay. In all of this, if you don't keep yourself well, then you will not be able to help other people as well as you would like. So some basic rules really, in that, you know, not everybody can be fixed. Look after your own well-being and mental health. I've already mentioned a couple of times, if something worries you, talk to somebody. Seek your own help, know your limitations, and make sure that your own well-being is okay, and encourage other people to, you know, feed into their well-being. I've added them there just in case you need to remind them. The other resource on there is the Mindline in Somerset. So you might use this, but you might also refer people to use it themselves. So if people are really struggling, Mind in Somerset is a fantastic resource, and they really know what they're talking about. So there are some links there to information and online resources that you might want to have a look at so that you can help other people. You'll be pleased to know we have reached slide 56, and I think I only told Steve I'd be half an hour. Sorry, Steve. Nobody really's asked many questions, so this might be a good opportunity for me to shut off the slideshow, do some questions, and then we can run round what one thing are you all going to take away. So this is a good time to wake up and to pop cameras back on, and I can see you now. Is everybody, have I lost anybody? It's all very quiet.
Can I just ask, I presume the Somerset our front door is the same as the one front door in North Somerset? Is that the same?
Very similar way of working, yes.
Yeah.
In that they take all the referrals into that one place and then work out where they need to go. Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
great. Okay.
Thank you. That's a good question. Any other questions? That's a bit dull, isn't it? Has it been that bad? It's been awful. You've all been concentrating on what one thing you're going to take away. Okay, so what one thing are you going to take away? Who shall we start with first? Let's do Steve first, because that's only fair, isn't it? Steve, have you been paying attention enough to be able to do the what one thing you're going to take away?
Yeah, I think for me, it's okay not to be an expert, and you can ask.
Yeah.
You can ask for help. You don't need to know all the answers. There's people that do.
Yeah. Even I don't know the answers sometimes, so it's absolutely fine not to know, but there's other people that will know it. So yes, just having those links, that's a good one. Thanks, Steve. Wayne, what was your what one thing?
It's towards the end actually about keeping yourself well and looking after your own well-being, because if you're not in a good state of mind, then you probably can't help others so well.
Yeah, quite important. Yeah, you're a huge resource to the cricket club, and you're a huge resource to the people that you will be supporting. So yeah, keep well. Yeah, thanks, Wayne. Tom that's not Tom, whose name I can't remember what you are when you're not Tom.
Hi, am I still muted now?
No, you're all right, I can hear you.
It was just that people just assume that adults don't need safeguarding and as well as children need safeguarding, really. It's in a different context, but actually everybody deserves the right to be safe and feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's a very valid point. Leighton?
I learned quite a few things actually, which was really good, but I like the meerkat thing because I think that relates to like the mental health stuff as well. Just being more meerkat more often, I think, help a lot of people.
Yeah. Be more meerkat. If you've got any kids that are working with you that link with adults as well, it's really captures their imagination. If you talk about how a pack of meerkats work and get the kids to be more meerkat. I mean, I'd say to my team sometimes, particularly over COVID, where we've had that lull of people feeling like, Christ, here we go again. We've done right, who's going to be more meerkat today? So it just gets people thinking a little bit different. The meerkats are really something to switch into.
Good.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Leighton. Laura?
I like the bit at the beginning you said about like vulnerable adults, and you said, well, actually everyone's a vulnerable adult, like you gave the lion situation. And I actually didn't really ever think of it like that. And you shouldn't just assume that a vulnerable adult is someone with potential SEN needs or anything like that. So I found that really interesting actually to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. What's really helpful is to describe what it is you think makes somebody vulnerable. That I understand a little bit more. So thanks, Laura. That's a helpful point. John?
For me, it was around about the increase in domestic abuse against men and how many more people are coming forward due to whatever reason, whether that be COVID or not.
Yeah.
But that was quite an interesting fact that I didn't know before.
Yeah, and this is where, you know, in my secure little network of professionals, we get quite unprofessional about perhaps it's just in lockdown, men are absolutely fed up of women telling them what jobs got to be done around the house.
I can concur.
And you know, which it happens. It's when it tips into the violence bit, you know, when the remote gets chucked at you, or you know, you get a whack or you get a hit. It's just incredible how it escalates and builds. So yeah, domestic abuse for men, it happens. It's a worrying trend and it's increasing. So yeah, thanks, John. We're keeping an eye on that. Andrew?
Hello. So in a nice way, there was a load of info for me there that I didn't really know a lot about. So I got partway through, I got confused about how much was coming at me. So we had a little chat on WhatsApp, and it was quite nice to get to a place where we just need to maybe clarify a few bits between when somebody approaches us with mental health things, how we share with that within a club and who we share that with, and what we do go to our safeguarding person with. So it was just a nice, the amount of info that I kind of struggled to take in because it's new to me was quite nice to set off that conversation. So that's what I'm taking away. It was quite good.
Excellent. Thank you. That is brilliant, because it is about sparking those conversations as what the hell am I going to do with it when I get one of these, and who needs to know what. And I'm hoping, Steve, you'll know the answer to all of that in terms of how the club wants you to function. Some of the links that I gave you outline the reporting requirements of you as club members, if I've got that right. But bearing in mind, I know nothing about cricket, but a little bit about safeguarding. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, so what I'm in the process of doing is putting together a safeguarding policy for adults on behalf of the board, which will have like a reporting procedure in it. So within your club network, the first point of call should be your club welfare, your safeguarding officer within your cricket club, and having conversations with them. So yeah, so as soon as I get that put together and the flowchart in place, I will be sending that out very shortly to everyone.
Great. The other thing I would say to that is exactly what you've done, Andrew, in that, you know, check it out with somebody else and just clarify it. You can use this little group here that you've got here as your meerkat pack to check it out, to tiddle taddle with. and to make sure that actually you've heard that message correctly, and this is what I should be doing. Should I do this next, or should I do that next? So use your group, use your pack to make sure that you're doing what's expected of you. Great point, Andrew. Thank you for raising that. Cool. Kate?
So Andrew and Laura and I were in that WhatsApp, and I took from it that we really need to safeguard ourselves a lot more as well, and what to do to safeguard our own selves. We've got our own policy, I just read it to be fair, about safeguarding children, but it doesn't say much about safeguarding adults and what to do with ourselves and stuff. It does say about the Lado and everything like that, but Steve's just kind of answered my whole thing. But yeah, I think we do need to safeguard ourselves a lot more in these situations, because we're not here to fix people or to tell people anything. We're just here to signpost them. And there definitely needs to be something in that safeguarding document that shows us and what we can do, but what we also should not do. Like, we, if in doubt, escalate it, but also safeguard our own selves. Like, do we have, sorry, this is like extra, do we have to log everything that someone comes to us with for safeguarding our own selves if it escalates to another area and stuff like that? I think that's also what we need to think about, and that's what I've taken from it.
Okay, so some of those things you will need to have covered within your policies and procedures, because as soon as you start logging stuff, you enter into a data protection issue.
Yeah.
So Steve will have all of that outlined in his policy at some point, so that you're able to be really clear, like you say, with people about what they can expect from you, and the fact that you're not the fixer, you're the listener, but you recognise abuse and you report it, and that's you responding to it. So yeah, that's good points, Katie. Thank you. Julie?
Hi, I was just thinking as you were talking about the domestic violence. So at school we have signage on the back of all of our toilet doors, which I know has been used in the past with the, particularly I like the new sort of boots thing where you could just literally walk in and speak to a member of staff and ask for Annie, and things like that. And it's actually got me thinking that we have absolutely nothing at the club. And we need some signage, we need something on the doors, because that little piece of paper might make all the difference for people. So got to go off and investigate a bit of that, I think.
Okay, so in public health, they do have some stickers that you can stick on the back of toilet doors. That's the free phone number for the domestic abuse stuff. I'll talk to Steve about how I can get him some of those stickers.
Okay.
But you're right, you might want to have something on the back of the door of, if you're a welfare officer, who do they contact and things like that. Don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay.
Now you've all bloody moved around again. Hang on a minute then. Who haven't I done? Donna? Have I done you?
No, I think I'm scraping the barrel now. I think everyone's kind of asked, as I said I was going to say. What I think sort of similar to Laura really is that I work with young people and vulnerable adults in an education environment. So actually it was really interesting that vulnerable people aren't just people that are under a social care act or under social care in general. So actually it's looking at it from that different perspective, that they're vulnerable because of their living situation, and actually it's just having that meerkat approach to sort of identifying that and looking out for it. And yes, I suppose that's what I'm going to take away from it.
Great, thanks, Donna. Hazel.
Yeah, for me it was really the awareness and the resource, like I can't remember who it was now that said about that people can actually just go into a pharmacy or go into a bank and actually go for a place of safety, a safe haven. And I think that would be brilliant to put up on a notice board as well at the club. And also the other thing for me is, obviously I don't really deal much to do with the cricket. I am the secretary now, but I don't really deal massively in the area with all the players and stuff. So I think it's sort of looking at that resource link that you've suggested is particularly to do with the sports link. So I think that would be useful for me.
Well, okay. Thank you, Hazel. John, I think you might be the last person. John, come
He's
in,
just,
John.
yeah, he's just
Is
come
he
in.
gone to sleep?
No, he's not. We're
Have I
also
done
doing
John?
meeting, so we're.
I've done John, haven't I?
You've done.
I've done him. Did he go off and get a pint? Is that where he's been?
Well, do you know me or something?
You did, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
That's just not on.
I was listening. I was just over the bar.
That's all right. And I've already done you, so that's all right. Go back to the bar.
Exactly. I can't do two.
It's no. Is that everybody that we've done? Have I been around everybody? Have I missed anybody? No, Brill. Thanks very much for your
You haven't
time.
done me.
Oh, who's
But
me?
it's all right, you
Gemma?
missed me the first time. Yeah, don't worry. It's okay.
Gemma,
Right.
have you heard anything different today? Is there anything that you've got to take away? Sorry.
It's all right. I suppose for me it was trying to empower the person to make the call when it's the call to get services and support, the importance of it coming from them. Because there's only so far you can go with the system unless that person is sort of engaged with it as well. So that's quite important. But I think with that is also to ask them, what do you want from this situation to make it more sort of like centered on them and how they kind of direct their own needs a bit, so you're not you know, you're listening to them a bit more.
Yeah, and it's very different from the children's child protection, because it is about that adult being central. What do you want? We can't do it to them, can we? So that's, you know, good observation, Gemma. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Okay. I've taken up more time than we thought we were going to. So I think in terms of questions and getting out of it what you need to, I'll share with Steve the slides. He can share my email. If there's anything you want, you can come back to us. Is there anything else, Steve, that you wanted to cover tonight?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Louise. Yeah, I've got all the stuff that you sent before, so I can send that round and we can have a conversation afterwards.
Brill. Okay.
Thank you.
Have you finished with them all? Are they all allowed to go and get a pint now?
Yes, they're all free to go. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's good to see you all.
Thank
you.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Good evening.
Thank
you.
you. Cheers. Bye.